passed the House of Representatives. She'll address that in just one moment. I believe our final vote, I just walked away, was 53-42. A bipartisan roll call on behalf of this effort. What was at stake here are the lives of hundreds of thousands of student borrowers who made a mistake by listening to schools that misled them, misrepresented, and defrauded them. They listened carefully when they were promised certain courses, certain classes, certain teachers, certain jobs, and that their credits could be transferred to other colleges and universities, and it turned out all of those things were lies. They ended up deep in debt with nothing to show for it. No diploma worth a darn, no education, no training. And there they are, stuck. We envisioned this possibility years ago when we created something called the borrower defense. We didn't think many people would ever use it, that there'd be a situation where students were defrauded into taking out student loans. Well, it turned out in 2014, Corinthian Colleges, a for-profit college and university, ended up going bankrupt, and pretty soon we took a look at their practices. We understood that state after state, attorney general after attorney general had gone after these schools and found that they had lied to the students over and over and over again. And so the students used their statutory relief under what's called borrower defense to go to the Department of Education and ask for relief from the student debt that they incurred after they were lied to. Some of them got that relief, and then came a new president in town named Donald Trump. And he, with Betsy DeVos as Secretary of Education, decided not to give relief any further, and then went from bad to worse. They decided to change the standards of proof for the students. Hundreds of thousands of students were now basically told, lawyer up. Don't come in here and tell me that the state has found that this is a fraudulent school. Don't tell me another 100,000 students have had this experience. Prove the case yourself, individually. And if you can't, tough luck. You're stuck with student debt for a worthless education at a for-profit school. And so today we had a vote in the United States Senate following the lead of the House of Representatives to say to students moving forward, we believe that there should be a fair standard here. We don't want your life ruined because some school lied to you about the education that they were promising or the loans that you were taking out. We believe that you deserve a second chance in life. 10 Republicans joined us in this bipartisan roll call. There are two possibilities. One is remote, and that is that President Trump will sign this and basically say to Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, go back to the drawing table. Come up with a fair standard for these students when you judge whether or not they were defrauded. That's unlikely he'll do it. More likely is he's going to veto it and then send it back to the House of Representatives, where I hope the Congresswoman can lead the effort to override the veto. In the end, I think we had an additional 4 Democratic votes who were absent today that will join us, which takes us to 57. We need 67 to override a veto. We've got to convince 10 more Republican senators to stand on the side of the students and the veterans organizations who've come to us and said it's unfair to do this to America's veterans. Congresswoman?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Listen, this is a great day, and I'd like to thank Senator Dick Durbin for his leadership in getting House Joint Resolution 76 passed in the Senate with bipartisan support. By passing this resolution in both the Senate and the House, this Congress is telling students, we stand with you. We value your future over predatory for-profit schools, and I thank my colleagues, both Democrats and Republicans, who can now return to their districts and their states and look students in the eyes and tell them that we put their future over predatory schools. Now we turn to President Trump and ask him to sign this bill into law. And despite the senator's pessimism on that, I'm going to make a plea that we ask the president to show American taxpayers that we don't have to foot the bill for these shady schools. We ask the presidents to stand up to veterans who are particularly at risk of these shady schools when they take advantage of their GI benefits, force them to take out debt that they don't need, and then leave them stranded with a mountain of debt and no degree. We owe it to veterans like my constituent, Kendrick Harrison, an Iraq war veteran, whom before his school shuttered, it had convinced him to take out $16,000 in debt on top of his GI benefits. And the GI benefits should have been enough for him to get his degree, so not only did the school squander the GI benefits, It squandered his future. In fact, this is just one of many stories from Nevada where over 30 schools have closed in the last 10 years. Predatory schools are not new. Borrower defense is not a new concept, as the senator said. It was created in 1992 to give students a legal right to seek loan forgiveness. Loan forgiveness because of misconduct by a school. And what do we mean by that? We mean the school lied to them about their job prospects upon completion. They were lied to about the transferability of their credits. They were enticed to take out debt that they might not have needed to do, and they were lied to about the quality of the education they'd received. Right now, in our country, after rampant misconduct of schools like ITT Tech and Corinthian colleges and Dream Center, 350,000 students, think about that, 350,000 students cannot become part of our economy because they're waiting to get this debt relieved. Many of these students, who are mostly minority, come from low-income families, but most importantly, veterans are still waiting relief that they're legally entitled to. The 2019 borrower defense rule that this resolution repeals makes it virtually impossible for a student who was purposely defrauded by a predatory school to get relief. The burden of proof for these students is so absurdly unrealistic that it would take a team of lawyers for them. Now, think about it. These are students who took out debt, who now are sitting on debt, who don't have a degree, and we're telling them, you need to hire a team of lawyers, you personally, to prove that the school not only defrauded you, but they intended to defraud you. Not only that, the 2019 rule severely weakens the early warning system that would force predatory schools, if they were found to be defrauding students, it would force them to pay the student's debt. But as a result, even in the extremely rare cases where we find relief for students, it's going to be us, the taxpayers, that are going to foot the bill, not these bad actor schools. It's clear that if the 2019 borrower defense rule goes into effect, we will have done nothing to prevent the rampant abuse that led to the 350,000 students that are currently waiting relief. This resolution is about their future, and without accountability, predatory schools will continue to prey on unsuspecting students. I'm proud to say that Congress has done our job to protect some of our most vulnerable students, students who we implore to go get a higher ed degree. And we need to work to improve their futures and the futures of veterans who have not only laid their life on the line for our freedom, but they've earned these benefits. So I implore the president to do the right thing and sign this resolution. Should he not, the senator and I will be working to overturn that veto. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Any questions?
Senator, is there any indication from the White House they're not going to follow through on the veto threat?
Just the president's candor at the Republican lunch yesterday, where he said that, I can't quote him exactly, but you ought to look at what he said when Senator Alexander said he was fighting for him on this rule, and the president responded that he wasn't quite sure of this rule, and he wasn't sure where he came down on it. The article I read suggested that Secretary DeVos called him later in the day and got him back in line. But at least he understands that this is a very difficult thing to explain and defend. I can't tell you how many people come up to me as I go across Illinois, and I'll bet as you go across Nevada, and tell me about the problems they have with student loans. I mean, it has really wrecked lives. And in many circumstances, it's not the student's fault at all. Think about it. You're 19 years old, maybe 20 years old, and you're sitting across from a desk and somebody's asking you to sign some forms, and the next thing you know, you're $10,000 in debt, and 6 months from now it's another $10,000, and pretty soon it's a huge amount of money that ends up really deciding what your life's going to be. Republicans hear this too. They have to hear it, and they must be telling these students, we'll do something for you. Well, here's a step, a good step, and it's particularly good for veterans. So here's my challenge as I see it, and I'm counting on Congresswoman Lee here. If the president vetoes this measure, I hope he doesn't, but if he vetoes this measure, it'll head back to the House, where you'll have the first chance to override. And if you do, it's my job to find 10 more Republican senators. We found 10. I think we can find 10 more. We're going to make sure that the American Federation of Teachers, the National Education Association, the American Legion, and all these veterans groups, Paralyzed Veterans of America, join us in this effort.
Were there any specific arguments that were effective in moving Republican members on this vote?
In the Senate, I'll let the Congresswoman speak for the House, but in the Senate, I really believe because student debt is such a big issue, front and center for all of us, that's the major reason that Republicans joined us. But secondly, I believe the veterans turned out to be a really critical ally in this effort. You know, these are men and women that we praise around the clock, around the calendar. And here was our chance to stand with them, and a number of Republicans wanted to do that. Okay.
Yeah. No, I just want to add the case of Kendrick Harrison. I mean, this is a young man who served in Iraq. He was home taking care of his kids. He was staying at home with his children, and he thought, you know, I need to get a degree. I have this GI Bill. And literally, he Googled at-home degree, and within 20 minutes, he received a phone call. 20 minutes, he received a phone call. And the school convinced him that while he waited for his GI Bill benefits to kick in and come to the school, that he could take out a bridge loan and they would reimburse that loan when they got his GI benefits. Needless to say, they didn't do that. He was forced into homelessness with his family because he couldn't afford his rent once the school closed. So, you know, when you ask what's convincing to our other members, I think I can give you a list of every state and how many defrauded students they have in their state. It's not hundreds, it's thousands across this country. And there's no state that has not been touched by predatory schools. But see, this resolution and turning back this rule is really about accountability in the future, because we're not going to prevent predatory schools from acting like this unless we hold them accountable. Right now, it's the taxpayers who foot the bill. There is no ramifications for for-profit schools when they defraud students, especially if this rule goes into effect. I mean, literally, it would be virtually impossible for a young student. Now, think about it. I mean, I'm one of 8 kids. When I applied to college, I didn't have an advisor. I literally looked on, we didn't have online back then. I'm a little before that. But I received things in the mail. I looked at them. I believed what I read, right? I believed that if I took out debt and went to the school, that I would get a degree that would allow me to get a job. That's what we're asking students all over this country to do. And what's happening is these schools, first of all, are not being truthful. They're telling them that they're going to get a job when they don't. And particularly vulnerable are veterans, because they come to school basically with GI Bill benefits. To some of these for-profit predatory schools, this is free money. It's like free money. And they take the money from them, and then this rule, which is particularly insulting, repeals or turns back all the indicators that you would have to know that a school's about to close its doors. And if, normally the school would be required to take out a line of credit to pay that debt should it, if it's going down that path. It eliminates that. So guess what? You get to pay. All of you, all of us get to pay this. And the school takes the money and runs. But most importantly, what's so incredibly upsetting, and this is what's important to every senator and every congressperson, is these students now are sitting on debt. They can't take out a car loan. They can't rent an apartment. They can't even think about buying a house because they're sitting on debt. Their credit score is virtually killed. But more importantly now, some of them, there have been studies that have shown they would have been better off not going to school in the first place. They're worse off now than they would have if they hadn't even taken the chance, invested in their future. And so I think that's how I'm going to implore my Republican colleagues in the House. Just look at the students in your state, in your district. I mean, this is the future of our country. We have an incredibly scary student debt crisis, and it's only going to get worse when we don't hold schools accountable. And that's what this resolution does.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. No
Off we go.
elbow.
That's right.